Febreze. Hi, I use Febreze Fade Defy Plug.
And I use this.
Febreze has a microchip to control scent release, so it smells first stay fresh for 50.
Last I checked, Rhodey is a Skrull.
What? Hey, welcome back to Screen Crush. I'm Ryan Airy, and this is all the Easter eggs, references, and little things you might have missed in Episode 5 of Secret Invasion, Harvest. Now, we have so much to talk about in this episode, breaking down the meaning of the name Harvest, all the Easter eggs, and who Fury was talking to at the end.
Who was it?
We don't know for sure, but I got a couple theories I'm going to talk about a little later in the video. So, let's get started. Now, I've been pretty critical of this show in our talkbacks, but I don't think this show is bad, just that it could have been so much better. Episode 5 gave us some of the very best and worst of the series, but man, when this show soars, it soars. Fury's monologue at the end is top-tier cinematic entertainment, and Sonya Falsworth always lights up the screen. I'm going to talk more about them and what I think is working as we go along. Now, the name of the episode is Harvest in quotation marks, which has a few meanings. Placing the title in quotes kind of denotes that Harvest is a code name, which we learn is true. Harvest is the name that Fury gave to the superhero blood they collected after the Avengers defeated Thanos.
That's it, right? Gee, that's cool.
Yes, it is. But Harvest has a few other meanings in the context of this episode. In the first episode, we saw that the Skrulls were planting crops in New Skrullos. And as we talked about in our episode 1 breakdown, planting crops is a way of colonizing land, calling it your own. Literally, putting down roots. But Gravik isn't just sowing crops. He was planting seeds within his people. With each new recruit, he gains another person who is loyal to his cause, another soldier for his war. Gravik is planning on reaping this harvest using his soldiers in a war against Earth and Fury. And, as we see in this episode, he would sacrifice all of his people to get what he wants. More power for himself. So when his people stage a coup against him, it's also like he's reaping what he sowed. He trained these people to commit violence, and they return that violence upon him. You can also say that the entire Earth is his harvest, a planet where he's been planting spies, which he's now ready to call into action by doing
Wait a second, that's right, I want to
That's the shape. See, this is incognito. It's called data brokers. The 10th, yep, Doug, after I signed up, I get almost, use my code ScreenCrush with the link below to get 60% off an incognito plan. It is a great deal that you don't want to miss. Now back to Secret Invasion. Last week was a massive shakeup for the show, ending on a cliffhanger. Talos died, saving the president's life. Ritson was injured. Rhodey was a Skrull, and Gravik has the powers of Extremis and... Now, I'm not going to spend the entire video being critical of this show, but I do want to talk about how this opening scene illustrates the problem the show is having. I keep saying that Secret Invasion should feel big when it feels small. And that's not because it doesn't have a large cast of superheroes or a copy of the comic book's globe-spanning plot. The show feels small because in places the flat TV lighting make it feel cheap. Even though this show had a $200 million budget, there's sequences that feel like they were filmed with a bare bones budget, like this opening. I mean, think about this. The President of the United States was just shot. Some of the agents and soldiers in the motorcade are still alive. Rhodey is still alive. Some other people would be in this hallway with Fury. Now, if the president was shot, even on foreign soil, do you think the next scene would look like this? One guy wheeling him into a brightly lit hospital? Compare this to the production value of a show like ER.
Sector 3, that way. Request, that way.
Or like in the movie JFK, when they dramatize the president arriving at the hospital.
Right now, it is just cheap.
There are 100 ways to shoot this to make it feel vibrant, dark, kinetic, and instead it's done fast and cheap. And we see that all through the show. Instead of creating dark corners and shadows, there's even flat lighting or fog that just makes everything feel flat and not cinematic. Anyways, enough nitpicking. The silver lining of this attack is that the press sees a shape-shifting alien save the president's life. So the public now know that Skrulls exist, just not how many of them are on Earth. And in a way, Talos fulfilled his goal, to talk to the president and show him that they were not a threat.
We tell him, guess what? Just saved your planet. Now, give me a little something in return.
And then Gravik returns to New Skrullos, his mission a failure. Now, I was a little disappointed by this scene, just a little bit. So, I thought that the MCU created a really compelling original villain with Gravik. Somebody with relatable motivations who was a leader to his people, like an alien Che Guevara.
Who's Che Guevara?
My roommate had a poster of his head in college.
Oh yeah, Che Guevara.
So, Gravik was all nuanced, but then, the moment one of his people challenged his authority, this happens. So this reminds reminded me a little bit of the Flag Smashers in Falcon and the Winter Soldier, a group of villains who make some really solid points, so they had to add in a scene where they kill innocent people.
There's some people in there.
This is the only language these people understand.
So we wouldn't sympathize with the villains too much. But in this case, we're seeing that Gravik doesn't really want to find salvation for his people. He wants power. He wants the powers of all the Avengers, and he wants total power over all the Skrulls and over Earth. Now this does explain why he's kept Fury alive though, because he wants the harvest. Now it's interesting that this guy says,
You ordered Fury's death when you knew Vara would never do it.
now this opens up the door for the idea that Vara is still Team Gravik. Like maybe she kept Fury alive until Gravik could find out where the harvest was. I doubt if that's what's going on, but it is a possibility. So this was all foreshadowed a few episodes ago when Pagon was chastised for not gathering the motherlode of all the samples.
You don't have it.
Harvest wasn't there.
So after Gravik kills him, he gives the Skrulls the most devastating insult you can lay on them.
You're faceless. And you're nameless.
Remember, the Skrulls have spent decades on Earth working as spies, assuming the faces and names of others while being unable to live lives for themselves, under their own names, in their own skin. It's why their #1 goal, the ideal that brought Beto to join them to begin with, is
Home. In my own skin.
And then Gravik changes his master plan to show us just how ruthless he is. He tells Rhodey to leak the location of New Skrullos to goad the president into wiping out his people. He does this for 2 reasons. 1, he knows that Fury will do anything to save Skrull lives, so it's leverage to get the harvest. And 2, it's a way to get the president to launch an attack on Russian soil. Now, I do think that Gravik would evacuate New Skrullos before an attack was launched, but this still shows how his main pursuit is power instead of his people. The Skrull Rhodey shows up at the hospital to finally lock down the location. And then we get a standoff between Rhodey and Fury where you can tell that Don Cheadle is thrilled to finally have something to do with this character.
When is it my turn? Don't I get a dream for myself? Starting now, it's gonna be my turn. Stay away, bro. Get off of my runway.
As Skrull Rhodey is able to act more like herself, you can really see this maliciousness seeping through. And Cheadle even gives the character more of a feminine quality. As this Skrull, Rava, can feel that she's so close to finally living in her own skin.
You don't want to kill me because you're not ready to die. But, being as I'm not one to pull a gun and not use it, let me give you a little heads up.
The scene ends with Fury being a fugitive for the murder of Maria Hill, but probably not for long. Then we go to London to my favorite character in the show, Olivia Colman, Sonya Falsworth, whose delightful alien torture always brings a smile to my face. She teased last episode that her boss, Director Weatherby, was a Skrull, and here we have the payoff. I even love the way she's not worried about getting caught by guards after firing a pistol at her director, because she knows that they'll walk up to him and see his Skrull wound.
Wait, if it's that easy to expose somebody as a Skrull, then why don't they just take a blood sample from everyone, like in the thing?
Hey, that's enough. So she uses this guy to get info on the Super Skrull machine, while the current Super Skrull, Gravik, faces an insurrection from his own people. They try to suffocate him, and he reverts back to his Skrull form. Now, I'm wondering if this is because he's near death, or because he's reverting back to his own skin as a show of strength and power. Either way, it's pretty badass. The fight also shows how Gravik is still getting used to his new powers. For instance, he doesn't use his Extremis abilities to burn away the bag, because for him, those abilities are still just a way to heal himself. And
Having your way.
Ooh, I'll be the judge of that.
Search him.
he eventually uses his Groot arm, but not until later in the fight. We still haven't seen him break out Cull Obsidian's super strong skin, which I'm sure will come into play next episode. Then he takes Beto out for a very violent, very public execution. But remember, Beto was the idealistic, sweet young Skrull that we met in episode 1, who was so happy to finally have Skrull food to eat. Now, we've talked a lot about how Gravik is using the terrorist playbook of recruiting young people, promising them the world, and then using them up for their own selfish ends. So this is a very tragic but all too common fate for Beto. I guess we can nix those theories that he was Fury's secret son.
You are not.
Fury then goes to his safe house and sees that his security tape inside has been broken. Now, this is the same place where the Skrulls first swore to spy for Fury way back in 1997. Fury gives us some appropriate backstory to this place, talking about how it was a refuge from the Nazis and eventually refugees from the West Indies settled there.
So Nazis attacked the West Indies?
No.
Separate incidents.
The West Indies influence also explains the artwork on the wall, which we pointed out in past breakdowns goes back to the series' use of faces and its production design. The walls are always filled with faces, clock faces, sculptures, photos, paintings, to show the many faces of the Skrulls. But also it goes back to the idea that the Skrulls are still searching for a face or searching for a racial identity. They have survived a Holocaust that tried to wipe them from history. Now, I've mentioned in past breakdowns how the show seems to be a metaphor for the experience of Black Americans. Skrulls have had their cultural identity stolen from them like African slaves, and their children have had to make a home for themselves on foreign soil. So it's fitting that Fury chose this place as a haven for Skrull refugees. He has a little catch up with Gaia before this masterpiece of a moment.
Oh shit. I'll be in touch.
Just terrible, like something out of The Room.
I have to go home.
Like, are these sirens specifically looking for Fury? Or are the cops about to bust in? Wouldn't he be safer in the secret safe house? I don't know, just moving on. It was a really funny way for him to leave a scene. On to more delightful Sonya mayhem.
Hello, Skrulls.
She offers them a choice,
Cake or death?
which is taken from a brilliant Eddie Izzard stand-up bit.
Cake or death? Cake, please. Very well. We're gonna run out of cake at this rate.
Sonya is like a pre-blip Fury, always in control, always with a cool comeback.
The males in my species are very similar. If they're not busy gaslighting you, they're threatening you with murder. That's what all the podcasts are about.
And then Gaia enters Fury's home, and this is the first time we've had a good look at this particular artwork on the wall of these like fluid shapes. Now I can see why this art would attract the interest of a Skrull. It's formless, changing.
Like how the Skrulls shapeshift.
Yes, but also it reflects the state of the Skrulls in this galaxy. They are without a unified national identity, so they are metaphorically formless. I can imagine that the art in their original world was much more permanent and stoic, with grand statues of the Skrull Emperor. Basically, the longer a people live in a single place, the larger and more elaborate their artwork becomes. For instance, the Jewish people were a diaspora scattered across the world for thousands of years, so their religious art tended to be small objects that could be taken with them, whereas Catholicism flourished in Europe for centuries, so the church was able to build these massive cathedrals. Anyways, you can tell a lot about society from their art, like Thrawn says.
To defeat an enemy, you must know them. Not simply their battle tactics, but their art.
And then we go back to Ritson, who for some reason is all alone in his hospital room. I don't know if this was because of COVID restrictions, but there should be doctors, security, aides, cabinet members, or at least like a guard from the Secret Service. All this hospital stuff is very bare bones and feels very cheap to me. This is where Rhodey offers Ritson the bait to start World War III, hoping that he feels vulnerable enough to order an attack as revenge on the Skrulls. The world also knows that a Skrull saved Ritson's life though, so Talos' sacrifice might just end up tilting Ritson's judgment and saving the world. Wouldn't it just be awesome? Okay, wait, like just the best. If Ritson did start World War III and like that's where Captain America Brave New World picked up with like a nuclear war happening. Like I know that won't happen because this show's more of like a character drama about Fury and we've got the Marvels coming out first, but damn, that would be killer. Even more of a game changer than the collapse of S.H.I.E.L.D. And then Fury gets on a private jet provided by a pretty awesome cameo. This is The Handmaid's Tale O.T. Fagbinley as Mason.
Wait, where have we seen him before?
In Black Widow. He's the one who provided Nat with a safe house and, by the end of the movie, a Quinjet. Now, we also have a pretty huge crush on her.
Always been a really good friend to me.
It would have been nice to have seen him address her death with Fury right here, like, I'm doing this for Nat, I miss her, I'm not doing it for you, but still, it's a really fun cameo. He says,
Still a lot better if we were on the helicarrier.
That's been mothballed.
and you remember that even after S.H.I.E.L.D. fell, Fury kept one helicarrier stashed away.
Pulled her out of mothballs with a couple of old friends.
Now, in Age of Ultron, the old friend is implied to be Cameron Klein, the agent who stood up to Hydra and the Winter Soldier. But the show Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., which is not technically part of the main MCU universe, revealed that Agent Coulson helped get the helicarrier out of mothballs. Gaia and Varro give Talos a Skrull burial, which is actually a lot like a Jedi burial, except a Skrull burial demands an artifact that ties the person to this world. Also, it's so sad that Gaia doesn't know the proper prayers to lay her dad to rest,
I don't know the prayer.
because she grew up without a real home or ties to her own culture. This leads nicely into Varra talking about her home. She loved this house, but she also needed to find a house that suited Fury. It's a lovely monologue that ends up being symbolic of what Gaia asks her next.
Do you ever get lost watching you in your own skin?
Now this is showing how she is still attracted by Gravik's message, but also illustrates the wall that will always exist between the Furies. Can Nick Fury ever accept his wife in her Skrull form?
Yeah, I bet this series ends with Nick Fury totally making out with an alien.
I think you're right. Another unintentionally hilarious moment happens when Varra is describing how she wants to fight Gravik off in her own house while standing in front of really large windows.
Meet them running down some dark alley.
Lucky thing that sniper missed. Pretty solid, if standard action scene where the two of them go back to back to fight off these invaders.
Hey, I got a question. If they wanted to kill her, why didn't a Skrull just become a piece of furniture and then like kill her after she fell asleep?
Because they don't do that.
What about a filing cabinet?
Why would I turn into a filing cabinet?
Then Fury uses the Widow's Veil to enter Finland. Now this is the face disguising tech we first saw in the Winter Soldier and then in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., and the last time we saw it was in Black Widow. Sonya meets him, and once again, she is the coolest character in the show.
This what we're doing?
Yes, this is absolutely what we're doing. Seatbelt, please.
Then Fury spills the beans about what's really going on here. He reveals that Rhodey is a Skrull, and this is so weird that after the Battle of Earth...
Hey, wait, what's the Battle of Earth?
Well, apparently that's the name given to the end battle in Avengers Endgame. Now that's pretty telling because it implies that it's the name given to the battle by all the alien species in the universe. Like, if it was just the people of Earth naming the battle, they would have called it the Battle of the Blip, or the Battle of Thanos, or something like that. But the Battle of Earth is what other worlds would be calling this fight. The fight that brought back half the universe. So this shows us that after running the Saber base for S.W.O.R.D. for so many years, Fury now has more of a galactic perspective. Anyways, Fury didn't waste a second after coming back. He immediately sent in the Skrulls to connect the genetic material of the Avengers.
Why would he do that?
Well, I've got a lot of theories on that I'm going to talk about in a video tomorrow, so make sure you subscribe so you don't miss a thing.
Cause you don't wanna miss a thing.
But you're right, it is pretty cold to think that the first thing Fury does after the battle is to collect genetic material of the heroes, and he sent in Gravik to get the material, giving him the idea to create Super Skrulls. So this finally reveals why this fight is so personal for Fury. He brings Sonya to a fake grave, but this is not the grave that we saw at the end of the Winter Soldier. It has a different epitaph. My guess is that this is his grave from after he blipped, because the epitaph implies that he died saving the world. Then in a beautifully performed monologue, Sam Jackson lays out Fury's arc for the show. Sonya asks him the question we've all been asking, why isn't he asking superheroes for help? And he replies,
"We can't keep depending on these superheroes to swoop in and save our asses. None of them can defend the world the way I can."
This is fascinating because Fury's whole deal since the events of Captain Marvel is that he thinks we need heroes because, well, as another ordinary guy put it,
we are not enough.
He ends by saying,
"If that ain't enough, maybe I am just dust."
Now this goes back to the heartbreaking moment of Infinity War, when the universe showed Fury just how small and powerless he was. Now, it's a little messed up that he's willing to put the entire Earth at risk just to validate his own existence, but this is still damn good writing. After he gets the vial from his grave, he enters this crypt, which has some very cool Easter eggs. Notice that the compartment where he keeps his Fury gear is covered in Norse runes. Norse as in Norse mythology, like Thor. Now in our trailer breakdown, we noticed that you couldn't really make out the bottom runes, but here you can read them all. And see, like, Norse runes are weird. They're kind of like hieroglyphics where each character is an object, so like all of this tells a story. So stay with me here. This means Ice Challenge, Water Ocean, Protection, Haven Odin, Danger Giant, Rain, Joy Harmony Kinship, The Sun, Honor Thunderbolt, Danger Challenge, Journey Thor, Psycho Trickster, Gathering. And this is spelling out Fury's history in the MCU. The Skrulls sought out a haven on Earth. There was danger from the sky when the Destroyer came. Thor arrives on the Thunderbolt to challenge the Destroyer. Thor journeyed home, and then the trickster Loki, who is in an endless cycle of loops, gathered together the Avengers.
That's so cool. So wait, who was Fury talking to at the end?
Oh, you mean this?
It's time. Let's finish this.
Could have been Guy or Priscilla, but my money is that it was your mom.
Wait, really?
No, I think it was Maria Hill. A lot of fans were miffed at how quickly she was dispatched in the opening episode, and I don't think that they're going to kill off somebody who's been around for that long, and who is played by such a well-known actor. Like someday, Samuel L. Jackson's going to retire, and Maria Hill is the perfect candidate to replace him, just like she does in the comics. Well guys, that's all the Easter eggs we found, but if you found any, let me know in the comments below or at me on Twitter, and if it's your first time here, please subscribe, smash that bell for alerts. For Screen Crush, I'm Ryan Airy.
We're reinventing our network.
For total confidence and complete control.
Fast, reliable, perfectly orchestrated. United States Postal Service.
Yes, yes. War, war. But the harvest? Yes, yes. War, war. But the harvest?
Hey, welcome back to Screen Crush. I'm Ryan Airy, and let's talk about Nick Fury's biggest, darkest secret that we learned in Secret Invasion Episode 5, The Harvest.
Nearly every Avenger spilled blood in the Battle of Earth. In the aftermath, some were sent in to collect that DNA.
Who the fuck starts a conversation like that? I just sat down.
Now, this is messed up for so many reasons. We are going to talk about why Fury did this, what his plans were, and how we think that all of this is going to lead up to Captain America: Brave New World.
Where was that?
I saw nothing. So just to catch you up, after the Battle of Earth at the end of Avengers Endgame, Nick Fury sent Skrull agents into the battlefield to meticulously collect the DNA of all the heroes. And he called this the Harvest. Now, that name is incredibly dehumanizing. It implies that the heroes were nothing more than resources to be gathered up and used for later.
Think you got enough?
And maybe that's how Fury has always seen the heroes, as living weapons to be used to defend Earth.
Man, that's creepy. Why would Fury treat the heroes in such a way?
Well, let's go back and look at Fury's personal history, both before and during phases 1 through 3, and then we'll understand where Fury's coming from, and we can figure out what his end goal really was and how it leads the way forward for the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Fury grew up seeing the worst of humanity. He grew up poor in the segregated South, much like Samuel L. Jackson, who was born in 1948 and grew up in Chattanooga, Tennessee. Now, it's interesting that Jackson's past mirrors his character so closely. Samuel L. Jackson also loved comic books as a kid, and also to this day.
I always read comics. From the time I was a kid, I used to buy comic books.
So I wonder if Nick Fury had a similar background, reading those Captain America comics that we saw in First Avenger. This would explain his unbridled faith and enthusiasm in superheroes. So in this series, though, we learn a little bit about Fury's upbringing, about how not only did he have to ride in a different train car than white people, but they weren't even allowed to buy food.
We couldn't go and dine in a car.
And we see this worldview reflected when he lectures Talos about the Skrulls.
There is not enough room or tolerance on this planet for another species.
Now you have to think how hard it must have been for Fury to climb the ranks of S.H.I.E.L.D. as a black man in the 1980s and 90s.
Men who look like us don't get promoted because of our daddies, no.
But like Talos says, the Skrulls were responsible for his rise to power.
You didn't start ascending the ranks until me and 19 of my people signed on as your invisible spy network.
Not that they did all the work for him, not necessarily, but the appearance of the Skrulls and Kree gave Nick Fury a purpose in his career. After meeting Carol and seeing the Kree warships, he realized that humanity was outgunned and needed help. They needed heroes. This is why, at the end of the movie, he authors the Avengers Initiative. In doing this, he admits that humanity is not enough to fight these threats. As he puts it, the heroes are there
to fight the battles that we never could.
At least, that's the story he told the Avengers. The real story is, Fury has always been building up contingencies, like the Harvest, just in case the heroes failed.
Excuse me.
Hey there, can I help you?
Yeah. Would you kill me, please?
What? Why?
Well, I got a promotion yesterday. I went out to celebrate, and I've made a series of errors.
You should have tried Z-Biotics. They're the sponsor of this video.
What's a Z-Biotic?
Well, Z-Biotics is a pre-alcohol probiotic. So here's how it's good to know that go to zbiotics.com. They will refund your money, no questions asked. So back to Fury. He always has a contingency, kind of like his secret eyeball that has backdoor access to the S.H.I.E.L.D. mainframe.
Alpha level. Encryption code accepted.
Fury's first contingency was the Skrulls themselves. As we covered in this video, it could have always been Fury's plan to never find the Skrulls a home. Or at least he lied about how easy it would be for the other planets to overcome their anti-Skrull, anti-shape-shifting sentiment and allow the Skrulls to settle in their world. It's a good video, you can check it out. But Fury had no problem using the Skrulls to make S.H.I.E.L.D. such a dominant global power that it reported directly to the World Security Council. So in many ways, it bolstered S.H.I.E.L.D. was his first contingency as he sought out superheroes. In the early days, his options were pretty limited as far as heroes went. Banner's Hulk was too unreliable, Hank Pym was a retired loose cannon, and Carol is very far away. So while he spent years waiting for more heroes to become available to him, he gathered alien tech, Hydra weapons, anything he could use in case a larger threat arrived. That's what I mean by S.H.I.E.L.D., which was original contingency. But then a real superhero revealed himself to the public. But he's such a mess that he's kind of a bust. And then, after the Destroyer levels the small town in Thor, Fury decides to really step up these contingency plans. This is when S.H.I.E.L.D. began to use the Tesseract to recreate the experiment of Arnim Zola, who used the cube to create weapons. And by the way, Zola worked for S.H.I.E.L.D. for years, but he never did this himself. And actually, that makes total sense, because why would Zola want S.H.I.E.L.D. to have that kind of firepower? Anyways, the events of the Avengers proved Fury right. The Avengers overcome their differences and protect the Earth. Hell, Fury had so much faith in them that he actually allowed them to go their separate ways at the end of the movie, just like how Carol left Earth years before but promised to return if she was needed. Now, when pressed on this, Nick says that they'll come back.
They'll come back.
Why?
Because we'll need them.
And then S.H.I.E.L.D. fell, and this only reinforced Fury's belief that the heroes were the only salvation for Earth. He couldn't stop Hydra, but Captain America could. He couldn't take down Alexander Pierce, but Black Widow could. And his moral judgment was so compromised at this point that he needed Captain America to be the one to kill S.H.I.E.L.D.
S.H.I.E.L.D., Hydra. It's all goes.
So in Age of Ultron, when the heroes royally screw up, Fury still believes in them.
I was kind of hoping when I saw you, you'd have me with that.
I do. I have you.
You see, after Winter Soldier, Fury didn't give up protecting the world. He just worked from the shadows. He even held onto an old helicarrier for emergencies. In Infinity War, we see him coordinating security with Maria Hill and referencing Cameron Klein.
Who's Calvin Klein?
Well, Calvin Klein is a time traveler. Cameron Klein is this guy who stood up to Hydra in the Winter Soldier and is working with Fury and Hill in this post-credit scene of Infinity War. The point I'm making here is that Fury didn't retire and let the heroes handle things. He kept working behind the scenes as a contingency in case the heroes failed. In fact, during this time, he was probably lending his expertise to SWORD, an organization partially founded by Maria Rambeau. But then, Captain America's Civil War happened. Now, even though Fury was not in that movie, we can guess that this conflict really shook his faith in superheroes. He saw Tony Stark learn all the wrong lessons from the fall of S.H.I.E.L.D. Instead of keeping power decentralized, Tony hands power over to the government. He requests for the government to keep him in check.
We need to be put in check.
And Fury also saw that the government no longer has any faith in the heroes to do the right thing. So now the government is striving for greater control as well. This is just laying the groundwork for some organization like Hydra to be born again. And then the heroes prove the government was right not to trust them. They invalidate Nick Fury's faith in them. They come to blows, nearly killing Rhodey, blowing up an airport, and putting a high school kid in the line of fire. That's followed by another conflict that finally ruins Fury's dream, when the Avengers truly split up.
That shield doesn't belong to you. My father made that shield.
And then the blip. Now, think about this from Fury's point of view. Everybody knows that at this point, aliens have entered Earth's atmosphere just like they did in the Avengers. Now, Fury had to have thought on some level that the heroes would repeat history and defeat the aliens. So the moment he starts to dust, look at his face. Fury isn't just sad that he's dusting. His heart is broken. He sees that the heroes failed. And that means that he failed by putting his faith in them. It's a shame that this show doesn't show us the immediate aftermath of the blip. Imagine Fury like reforming on the spot, learning he's been gone for 5 years. 5 years! He used to know everything. Now he knows nothing. His life's work was meaningless. Now we hear about this in this show.
You were never the same after the blip.
I think Thanos' snap changed you.
But it would have been so much more powerful to see this happening to him. So this brings us back to the Harvest. Sorry about all that recap, but it's important to know his headspace. The Battle of Earth happens the same day that Fury is reformed. So that means that Fury's dusted back, finds out it's been 5 years, then hears there was a big battle with some aliens, and that Tony Stark died, and that Natasha is dead. And his first thought is, hey, let's get some Skrulls over there on the double to collect some blood samples.
That's weird. It's really weird.
And, you know, in the scene where Cap is going back in time, in the background, we do see repair crews and helicopters carrying away crates. So there would have been some people on this site. Very easy to send in some Skrulls and bingo, hero DNA.
But why does Fury want Avengers blood?
Well, I can think of 4 reasons, and I'm going to rank them from most altruistic to mostly evil.
I think you're evil!
It's time we had a heart-to-heart about our future. 68% of business leaders report a lack of diversity in their workforce. Closing that gap can open a world of opportunity. DeVry Scholars programs provide you the critical skills to help you seize it. You are the future. Advance your ambition.
Number 1, maybe Fury simply wanted to replicate their blood in case any of them needed a blood transfusion. Let's
just say I want some money.
Here's your chance. Kill me. Eat lead, sucker.
After all, it would take very specific blood to be compatible with Hulk, a super soldier, or a woman powered by the energies of the Tesseract. Possibility number 2. So you saw in Civil War that S.H.I.E.L.D. kept some of Steve Rogers' blood, even though in the show Agent Carter, Howard told Peggy that she had the last vial of it.
With your smile so warm and your cheeks so soft.
And we also saw that Hydra used that blood to make super soldiers, so maybe that was also S.H.I.E.L.D.'s MO from the start. Fury wanted the heroes' blood to learn how to replicate their powers, and this is what would have given Gravik the idea to begin with. Of all the possibilities, I think this one's probably the most likely. I mean, think about it. Fury's faith in the heroes is now non-existent, and he's a guy who loves his contingency plans, so he wants greater control. This blood would allow him to have his own squad of superheroes, just like the Hydra weapons that S.H.I.E.L.D. was trying to build in the Avengers.
Yeah, but maybe those private superheroes could just just rebelled against Fury? How would he know that they were going to be loyal to him and him alone?
Well, this is where we really get into some Aldous Huxley Brave New World stuff. Cloning. In the Civil War comic book, Thor was dead at the time, so Tony Stark created a mindless Thor clone to do his bidding. Now, doing this crossed many ethical lines, so several superheroes turned against Tony after this. Now, the MCU has not done much with clones yet, but they're a big deal in the comics. Spider-Man's Clone Saga was about a villain called the Jackal using Peter Parker's DNA to create several spider clones, and you know what? Even though that storyline almost ended Marvel Comics, very long story, it would still make a killer movie. Imagine that twist, though, at the end of this series when we go into like Fury's basement in his house and we see like rows of cloning cylinders. I mean, Marvel's already using a lot of Rick and Morty writers, they might as well use the basement clones too.
Operation Phoenix is not the fallback I thought it would be.
It could also be that Fury wanted to clone the heroes just in case they died. Let's give him the benefit of the doubt on that one. And that brings me to the fourth most evil possibility, and probably the most likely. He wanted the blood to find and exploit the weaknesses of the heroes.
But why would he do that? Is he a bad guy?
No. He did it in case he would have to, With some of Banner's blood, he could figure out how to neutralize the gamma radiation inside of him, or how to rob Steve Rogers of super soldier serum to make him old. I'm actually still disappointed that Thanos didn't do that to him with the time gem, or like turn him into Skinny Steve, and then Tony would have had to have replicated his dad's experiment from First Avenger and Avengers Endgame. Like, it would have been a full circle moment. Shit, that would have been great. This is what Batman does in the comics. He's got a plan to take down every member of the Justice League just in case they go rogue.
The Justice League is far too dangerous to lack a failsafe against any possible misuse of our power.
This is why Superman gave him Lex Luthor's kryptonite ring, in case he ever lost his mind or went out of control. Or, in the film Justice League Dark, he gave him a kryptonite bullet.
If the League ever did go over to the wrong side, I want there to be somebody I can trust to keep the planet safe. Even from me.
But I digress. I mean, Fury could have also wanted to know the hero's weaknesses so he could help them. Like, for instance, if he knew how an enemy could drain Carol's powers, like Wanda did to 838 Maria Rambeau, then Fury could make the heroes more powerful so they could overcome their weaknesses. But I think Fury is more of a Batman guy. No matter what his reason was, taking genetic material of heroes who just saved the universe without their consent is a total villain move. And calling it the Harvest dehumanizes the heroes and makes it clear that Fury only ever saw them as assets. After all, this is the guy that ruined Coulson's near-mint collection of vintage cards.
It's a vintage set. Took me a couple of years to collect them all.
Just to tell the Avengers a convincing lie.
Yeah, that is a total supervillain move.
Right? I mean, no wonder Fury doesn't want the heroes to get involved in this show. Now, this is actually a great explanation for why there are no heroes in this show. He doesn't want them to know that he collected their blood and planned to use it against them. So, that's what we know. But I'm mostly interested in how this is going to affect Captain America, Captain America, Brave New World. So, we don't know much about Brave New World yet, and I'm not a guy who likes to read plot leaks. We do know that it features Harrison Ford as a recast Thunderbolt Ross. We know that Ross is now going to be the president, and that Ford is now taking roles like this because he's in the sunset of his career and he wants to try new things. So I think it's very likely that they will mocap him and Ross will turn into the Red Hulk like he does in the comics.
Either surrender peacefully, or you can resist. Please resist.
And this could explain the return of Tim Blake Nelson as Samuel Stearns, the supervillain, the leader from the comics. In The Incredible Hulk, Stearns has synthesized Bruce's blood, and he turns Emil Blonsky into
an abomination,
which was later totally undermined in She-Hulk.
My favorite chicken, Princess Silk Feather, was stuck.
Your favorite chicken?
Yeah. Stearns could help Ross become the Red Hulk, or maybe, as the supervillain, the leader, he's simply the big bad of the movie who's trying to reorganize the world into a one-world government. So from all that information, we can make a few guesses about how the Harvest ties into this film. First of all, Secret Invasion, the comic book, was a very important crossover because, in the aftermath, the supervillain Norman Osborn was put in charge of S.H.I.E.L.D., and he started to remake the world's security. He formed his own team of Dark Avengers, comprised of supervillains masquerading as heroes. So bring that idea back around to the Harvest. Superhero blood. Hulk blood. Blood.
Blood. And bits of sick.
Think of Thunderbolt Ross as the embodiment of all of Nick Fury's worst traits. In The Incredible Hulk, he's hunting down Banner because
that man's whole body is property of the U.S. Army.
In that movie, he gives Blonsky a super soldier serum to combat the Hulk. So even in his first appearance in the MCU, we see him trying to harness superhumans to tighten his control of the world. Like Fury, he ends up just having to trust a superhuman, the Hulk, to do the right thing and defeat the Abomination. But Ross didn't learn from this lesson. He doubled down. He spearheaded the Sokovia Sokovia Accords, split up the Avengers, even hunted down Black Widow, and really just out of spite. So I wouldn't be surprised if Ross, or his namesake super team the Thunderbolts, were the answer to that in the MCU. Now, those titles for Cap 4 does sound like it's about the world governments coalescing into a single government, which could kick off the war with Wakanda, Talokan, or New Asgard, or, like we talked about in this video, World War III could actually break out when these superpower nations refuse to bend the knee. Now, this would mean that by the time Kang rolls in, the Earth is defenseless to stop him. Now, that does sound a bit too much like Phase 3, where Civil War divided the heroes prior to Thanos' arrival. So I'm sure that Marvel's not going to repeat the exact same beats, but this setup of Fury collecting hero blood could take the MCU in so many interesting and fun directions, and I am pumped for it. And everybody, just remember to head to zbiotics.com/ScreenCrush and use the code ScreenCrush at checkout for 15% off. Thanks again, ZBiotics, for sponsoring this video, and I want to hear from you guys. What do you think of all this? Let me know in the comments below or at me on Twitter. And if it's your first time here, please subscribe, smash that bell for alerts. For Screen Crush, I'm Ryan Airy.
They're flexible schools from a flexible child in environmental suits for learning.
Thanks to BetterHelp for sponsoring this video. And let's talk about it. Thanks to BetterHelp for sponsoring this video.
Look at me! You did this!
Hey, what's up? Welcome to Screen Crush. I'm Ryan Airy, and let's talk about the Easter eggs, references, and little things you might have missed in the final episode of Secret Invasion.
Here we go.
So for the most part, I'm going to keep my opinions to myself about this episode just so we can focus on the breakdown. There is a lot of good to focus on in this finale, and the episode does set up some very interesting repercussions for the MCU, like sets up new teams and directly sets up Captain America Brave New World. In a couple of days we will have a review video out, but in the meantime, let's break this baby down. The episode begins in the aftermath of Priscilla and Gaia fighting off the Skrulls in the Fury home.
Oh yeah, that fight where shape-shifting aliens broke in loudly through glass windows.
Yep, that's the one. One of the strongest aspects of this show is the relationship between Nick and Vara. Samuel L. Jackson and Charlene Woodard are able to imbue these characters with an easy, lived-in energy, even though we're mostly hearing about their relationship and haven't seen it develop over other movies and shows. They feel like a real married couple. Fury says,
I have dialed this number 1,000,000 times.
And the episode sheds some light on why Fury went to the space station alone and didn't bring his wife. Later on, Gaia as Fury says,
You know, the last thing I felt before I flaked relief.
Now, this was Gaia pretending to be Fury, so we don't really know if this is how Fury actually felt, but it would make sense that he just wanted to put the Skrulls behind him, and that would include his wife. After all, he spent years and years lying to the Skrulls, using them. And if he was lying to the Skrulls, then that means he was lying to his wife for over a decade.
But why couldn't Fury find the Skrulls a home? Aren't there like hundreds of planets out in the galaxy?
Well, in this past video we did, we speculated that the reason for that was twofold. One, they needed to find a planet that was far away from the Kree Empire. And two, there would be a lot of anti-Skrull, anti-shape-shifting sentiment out there in the universe. I mean, think about it. In episode 2, we learned that the Skrulls used to be a very war-mongering race.
We did not end up homeless refugees because we were unwilling to wage war. We ended up homeless refugees because we were too willing.
And it's pretty obvious why you wouldn't want a shape-shifting race on your world. They could replace you and take over your planet. The Skrulls probably did this for centuries before their disastrous war with the Kree. Now, one cool thing about this show is the focus on Nick Fury, who is kind of like the MCU's Batman, who now has kind of lost his mojo.
The fact that you don't know tells me all I need to know about this new, rather old Nick Fury.
He has no powers. He's not an alien. He's just an exceptional human being with an exceptional tactical mind. But what really sets this series apart is how it dives into what makes Fury human. His life is filled with mistakes and traumas. We see a broken man, someone who cannot cope with his own failures and regret. And that makes him so relatable because everybody in the world has faced difficult times and trauma like this. I mean, I know I have. I have gone through very dark times in my life when I just hated myself and I couldn't see a way out. But therapy can help. And a lot of you may want therapy, but you feel like it's too expensive or too far away or you don't know how to get started. And that is where BetterHelp comes in. They're the sponsor of this video. Like, I'm from a rural area where it's really hard to find therapists. So BetterHelp, to get started, you can send messages straight. It's more affordable than traditional offline therapy. Now back to what I was saying.
Anyways, Fury calls to tell Vara goodbye as we intercut between our two storylines in this episode. One is Gaia's attack on the compound that she used to call home, and the other is the hilarious standoff between Fury, Ritz, and Sonya and Rhodey. Now, knowing now that it's Gaia and not Fury walking walking to the base hits a little bit harder. Gaia believed in this place. She trained and recruited soldiers for Gravik's war in this place, so she knows exactly how to breach their defenses. First, she walks by Beto's corpse. Now, this is on the same spot where we saw Gravik slit his throat last episode, and this is a real heartbreaker for Gaia. I mean, after all, she recruited Beto, she brought him into this life, and then she sees that Gravik has apparently killed all the Skrulls that worked for him.
Why'd he do that?
Well, they staged a coup against him, and this shows that Gravik never really cared about the Skrull people. They were just tools for him to get what he wanted, more power and revenge on Fury. Gaia also knows where all the cameras are in the compound, so she's very careful to keep up the old man Fury act, stopping to cough and take iodine pills to protect against the radiation. Back at the most understaffed hospital on the planet, Sonya tells Rhodey that Fury is closing in. She does this to panic Rhodey so he'll move the president.
Why wouldn't you just keep the president in that room, surrounded by security?
Because Sonya needed to pick off the security one at a time.
Oh, okay. I don't really understand, but you're the human. You seem to know what stuff is.
So Rhodey was arguing with an admiral about ordering an attack on Russia, and the admiral says that the motorcade attack could have been a false flag operation.
What's a false flag?
Well, a false flag is just what it sounds like. It's when a country's military wears another country's uniform and then attacks a third country to kick off a war between countries 2 and 3. The Nazis employed a similar tactic to justify their invasion of Poland. Kingsley Ben-Adir gets his time to shine as Gravik, especially this line.
This face. This was the first human I killed.
Man, I loved all this stuff. Gravik was a very well-nuanced villain. Him taking on the face of his first victim is a way of connecting all of his crimes to Fury's original sin. All of this is only happening because Fury used the Skrulls as soldiers and didn't keep his word. As Gravik said,
and everyone I killed took a little piece out of my heart.
Gut-wrenching. Gravik also mentions Fury's invisible cloak, which probably refers to the stealth mode on the helicarrier. Then Gaia lures him into the middle of the chamber. Now remember, Gravik would never suspect that she is actually Fury because he has no idea the guy is alive. And also, Fury is his weakness. His hatred for Fury blinds him and makes him put himself in a very vulnerable position. Now notice the floor of the chamber almost looks like a star chart. Pretty neat detail since Gravik believes that getting powers will lead to the Skrulls finding a new home on Earth. Now, even though this is not the real Fury, he does land a line that really hits at the heart of the show.
Because it's easier to save the lives of 8 billion people than it is to change their hearts and minds.
This connects to Fury talking about growing up in segregated Alabama in episode 2. He's seen firsthand how humanity is blinded by racism and hatred.
Coming out of Alabama, we always had to ride in the color car.
And this episode's ending proves him right. Anti-Skrull paranoia has erupted all over the planet.
Yeah, but shouldn't that have been part of the show? That would have been so cool.
Yeah. Then he says,
you know why I came back to Earth? You were the youngest Skrull on my team.
And this is very clever. Gaia has no idea if that's true or not, but this is what Gravik would want to hear. He would want to hear that Fury thinks that Gravik is so important to him, because Fury is all Gravik thinks about. For Gravik, it's also poetic justice that he's getting the DNA of Carol Danvers. After all, she was the one who promised to find his people a home, but instead of using her powers to help the Skrulls, she spent a generation out in the cosmos helping others. Replicating the powers of the heroes was a major part of the Secret Invasion comic book. The Skrulls imprisoned the entire Illuminati, conducting experiments on them to learn how to replicate their abilities. Now, we should have known that this wasn't Fury, though, when he said this.
Wipe out some other species, I don't give a damn.
And then back to the hospital for what I kind of think is the low point for the MCU.
Give me your gun, goddammit.
That's not good, person.
Look, okay, I guess this particular president just feels better if he has a gun. Now, I'm sure they just needed him to get a gun so we could have that big standoff at the end, but maybe, I don't know, this bodyguard could have been shot and then his gun could have fallen on the gurney or something. It is also weird that Ritson is in a gurney instead of in a wheelchair, but one thing this scene does sell really well is how much of a stupid idiot Ritson is. I mean, if the whole point of this show is to show that this guy is a terrible president who will soon be replaced by Harrison Ford in the movie Captain America: Brave New World, then I get it. Hell, Fury basically tells us this is going to happen.
That's real one-term president stuff.
Alright, so then back to Gravik, where Gaia's master plan is about to unfold. She's in the middle of the chamber with Gravik, who has no idea that he's about to give her superpowers.
Hey, I have a question.
Yeah, Doug, what?
So her plan was to let Gravik make himself all-powerful, and then she was just hoping that he would have her stand in the middle of the machine too?
That's what we're going with, but let's not get too bogged down with the idea that she should have fought Gravik before he got all the powers of every MCU character ever. There is some fun cameos in here that include all of the DNA samples that Fury has collected, and not just the people who fought in the Battle of Earth. For instance, we see Ghost. He would have had her DNA because she was a S.H.I.E.L.D. agent for years. The names we see are Captain America, Corvus Glaive, Thanos, Outrider, Proxima Midnight, Captain Marvel, Abomination.
How'd he get his DNA?
Well, the Abomination was held captive by S.H.I.E.L.D. for years. Then there's Mantis, Cull Obsidian, Drax, Korg, Ebony Maw, Frost Beast, Hulk, Chitauri, Valkyrie, Thor Odinson, pretty cool to use his official full name there, Gamora, Florus Colossus, that's Groot by the way, and the Winter Soldier. And then Gaia and Gravik have a big fight where they run through a lot of these powers. And notice that these are only the heroes whose powers are tied directly to their DNA. Doctor Strange is not included because his abilities are a learned skill, and Wanda Maximoff is also not in the mix even though she is the strongest Avenger. This is because her abilities are also mystical. The chaos magic of Chthon has turned her into Scarlet Witch. God, remember those days? Just such a high bar for the MCU. Well, this Ritz and Gunn scene is kind of a low bar. There's not a lot to break down in this scene, just a lot of people trying to convince Ritson that Rhodey is a Skrull. It would have been kind of cool if there was at least one scene where there were two identical people and Ritson didn't know who to shoot. But all of this is pretty much the old cliche, I'm not the imposter, he's the imposter kind of scene. Again, if the point of the scene is to show that Ritson is a stupid, weak president, mission accomplished. Let's go through the powers that Gaia and Gravik display in the fight, which was basically this scene with a lot of MCU Easter eggs thrown in.
All you have to do, go away! Stop standing in the driveway talking about custody!
First, we see the Extremis healing abilities. Gravik starts with one Groot arm and then a Cull Obsidian arm going for just brute strength. Gaia counters with Drax's arm as Gravik uses super strength to throw a card. Now, I don't think he has the strength of like the Hulk, the Abomination, everybody combined. I think it's more like pick a power and use them one at a time kind of thing. Then Gaia uses Ghost power to phase through the car as Gravik suddenly has the ear of the Abomination and the arm of Korg.
Man, they got good at using those powers really fast.
They sure did. Gaia uses the Frost Beast abilities to create an ice arm, and then she uses the powers of Captain Marvel to ram him. Now, as they're falling through the air here, it seems like he's using Thanos' strength against her. Like, look at his arm here. It looks very much like Thanos' arm. And she gains the upper hand by using the powers of Mantis. Then she flies above him, striking a pose that is very Captain Marvel. After he wakes up, he uses the telekinetic powers of Ebony Maw. You remember, this guy.
Your powers are quick. You must be popular with children.
When he uses Maw's telekinesis, he even makes like the same elegant hand gestures, flicking objects through the air. He also, for some reason, replicated Ebony Maw's rings. He creates a Hulk leg to kick her, and we've seen the Hulk kick like this before, like here against Emil Blonsky.
Is that what you got?
And also here. Gaia gains the upper hand by going full Captain Marvel binary mode.
What does that mean?
Well, in the comics, for a time, Carol went by the name Binary, and she was this extremely powerful cosmic force whose eyes glowed. So, in the movie Captain Marvel, when she finally unlocked her full powers, we called that her binary mode, kind of like what Gaia does in this show. And then she does a superhero landing.
Superhero landing! Yeah, that's really hard on your knees.
They're still doing those, huh?
I guess so. And now Gaia is by far the most powerful Marvel character of all time, probably next to Wanda. Now, overall, I like the Super Skrull battle. In the comics, the Super Skrull was originally a Skrull warrior with his DNA altered to give him the powers of the Fantastic Four. But over the years, there have been more and more Super Skrulls with different powers. And just like in the comics, they show their abilities by having them transform a part of their bodies, like their limbs or their arms, or like when Gaia grows Mantis's antenna. And then Gaia goes to free the humans that the Skrulls held captive. There's the doctor who invented the Skrull machine, the art dealer from a few episodes ago, and of course, Rhodey and Everett Ross. Now, we did not get the moment I was hoping for where Rhodey wakes up and says, "Where's Tony?" But we did get something interesting here. Rhodey can't walk, confirming that he was replaced after his accident in Civil War. So this meant that he could have been replaced before or after Avengers Endgame, so he may or may not know that Tony has died. Now, he may not be able to walk here, but remember, we saw Rhodey walking with leg braces in Infinity War and Endgame. Kevin Feige has said that Rhodey has been a Skrull for a while, but I'm guessing we'll find out more in the Armor Wars movie, if that's even still happening.
Who knows anything at this point?
Actually, Ryan, it's worth mentioning that Rhodey is wearing a hospital gown. Now, everyone else who's held captive here seems to be wearing whatever they had on when they were abducted by the Skrulls. So, we can assume that Rhodey was wearing this hospital gown when he was taken. So, when was Rhodey in the hospital? Well, Captain America Civil War, when Vision accidentally shot him down out of the sky. Rhodey fell down to the ground and was paralyzed. Now, when Rhodey wakes up in this holding chamber, we see him lean forward like he's about to start walking, almost as if he is unaware that he's paralyzed. So, I think that it's possible that this Rhodey has been sedated and held captive ever since that fall in Captain America Civil War and when he was undergoing surgery for that fall. If this is the case, that means that Skrull Skrull Rhodey was present for Avengers Infinity War and Avengers Endgame, which completely changes the way we'll look at those movies going forward.
That's a good point, Colton. Thank you. So then Ritson way overreacts, publicly declaring Skrulls an enemy of Earth.
That is why tonight I'm presenting to Congress for immediate emergency authorization a bill that designates all off-world born species enemy combatants.
Idiot! Don't!
This is very similar to the ending of X2, X-Men United. That movie was going to end with the president making a speech decrying mutants until the X-Men stepped in to change his mind.
Good morning, Mr. President.
But in this case, Ritson sparks global chaos.
Now you got dumb.
Again, the best president. We have a video coming out really soon about how this can set up Captain America Brave New World, a movie I am very excited for. I mean, think about it. Ritson has just created a chaotic world here. People assassinate politicians because they think they're alien lizard people. This, by the way, is the most realistic thing I've ever seen in the MCU, that people would become totally unhinged by this news. So, of course, amidst all this chaos, a war hero like Thunderbolt Ross, played by Harrison Ford, would win in a landslide, promising to bring law and order to the entire planet. Very similar to how Norman Osborn rose to power after the Secret Invasion comics. If the world is paranoid, chaotic, then that's a recipe for the world governments to become authoritative and take greater control, which might explain why the original title of the Captain America 4 movie was New World Order. Anyways, Fury comes home, where Vara insists on finding out, does he love the real her or her human face?
Did you fall in love with me? Or the face that puts you at ease?
Which again speaks to the larger question here. Can Skrulls ever be accepted by humanity? If Fury can accept Vara in her Skrull form, then there's hope that the rest of humanity can accept the Skrulls too. And by extension, we humans can accept one another as well. Really though, back to Ritson's decision to take revenge on the Skrulls, it seems like he was just embarrassed that Rhodey fooled him for so long and now he's acting out. Cause, he's a dumbass.
Give me your gun, goddammit.
I mean, that gun scene was stupid, but it did show how he's the kind of guy who wants control. Just the kind of guy who would declare open season on Skrulls. So maybe the gun scene wasn't such a low bar. Let me know what you thought of that down in the comments below. And then Sonya meets up with Gaia.
I will use you, and you will use me, and together we'll make this planet safe for both our people.
Now, Sonya is basically trying to use Gaia and the remaining Skrulls like Fury did as her agents to bolster the power of her own government. Now, this might lead to Sonya forming MI-13. In the comics, this is a group of British superheroes and agents who are tasked with taking down paranormal threats. Other heroes have been teased who could be part of this team, for instance, like Dane Whitman's Black Knight.
Sure you're ready for that, Mr. Whitman?
I love this scene, though, of them discovering the bodies. Very Invasion of the Body Snatchers. It's a great way to show just how deep this conspiracy goes, how many Skrulls are loose on the surface of Earth. This image would have been very cool in an earlier episode where it would have actually mattered. Now, we do know that there will be some international heroes in Brave New World, like Sabra, so I'm actually hoping that Sonya or her team will come back in that movie. Olivia Colman has been my favorite part of this show.
The smart ones start talking earlier than that. You a smart one? Right, no, didn't think so. Very good at being your bestie. I'm also devilishly good at being not your bestie. It's really just a matter of taste. Cake or death.
In the final montage of the chaos, we see that the Prime Minister of Great Britain was back to being a human, but was then assassinated. And this council member, the good one who rebelled against Gravik, successfully fights off an assassination attempt, while Shooter McGavin was shot on air. Honestly, all of this is great, and really should have happened in episode 3 to raise the stakes of the series. And then, just as Fury is about to leave, Vara joins him, and Fury has some good news.
Kree said they're open to peace talks with the Skrulls.
Which is nice. It would mean that the Skrulls could stop running and maybe join their Emperor on New Skrullos. Now, we have seen the Kree sue for peace a lot in recent years. Guardians also began when they wrapped up their 100-year war against Xandar.
We signed your peace treaty, Nova Prime. What more do you want?
Also, apparently, Vara is a great diplomat.
You're the best diplomat the Skrulls have ever had.
Fury asks her to leave, but she says that her work here is too important.
All my work is here, darling. And it's never been more important.
Wait, what work? What's your job? She growing plants?
I have no idea, dude. Kind of seems like that you immediately would say that peace with your people and their oppressors would take greater precedence over growing some plants in your greenhouse, but who can really say? We then get a very sweet scene where he embraces her true form.
I just wanted to tell you that I love you as I am.
Only as you are.
and then they kiss, giving hope that all of humanity could one day live in peace with the Skrulls. After all, if Nick Fury could eventually learn to love his wife of 10 years, then maybe all of humanity can learn to embrace a race of shape-shifting extraterrestrials that try to eradicate the planet with nuclear war.
Well, guys, that's all the Easter eggs we caught, but if you found any, let me know in the comments below or at me on Twitter. And if it's your first time here, please subscribe, smash that bell for alerts. For Screen Crush, I'm Ryan Airy.
Folks here want their cities back.
It's time to hit refresh, to be buttoned up, to feel